YouTube, Autumn Beckman here. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. My channel is all about luxury on a budget, so if you're into that sort of thing, make sure you subscribe, like the videos that you enjoy, and click the bell notification icon to be notified when I post a new video. I have some notes up on my screen here, so pardon me if I look over. I want to make sure I cover everything for this topic. This is a topic that tends to have a lot of controversy surrounding it because people have very strong reactions on one side or the other. I have a very strong reaction to it, or at least I did when I first started thinking about this. Then I started thinking about other people's perspectives too, and I thought the other side had some good points also. So I'm going to start with the perspective that I had going in, which is still pretty much how I feel, but I'm also going to talk about some of the points that the other side makes, so I will be discussing both sides of this issue. So if I start and you don't like what I'm saying at the beginning, stay tuned and hopefully you'll find something that you agree with. I also want to say that I'm talking specifically about Louis Vuitton here, but this really could apply to luxury in general, or even a lot of items that are not luxury. There are a lot of things that people think kids should or shouldn't have. Before we get started here, I would love to know in the comment section below what your opinion is on this topic as we're going into this conversation. Are you for or against luxury for children? Leave that below. Write your initial opinion and then don't post it yet. Watch the rest of the video and then post your reaction afterward in the same comment, or post and then post a second one, whatever you want to do, whatever's easiest for you. But I'm curious to know if I say anything that changes your mind or makes you think about it a little differently, opens your mind to the side that you don't agree with right now, or just something that I said that stands out to you. So remember to leave some comments below about your opinion on this controversial topic. Okay, why am I doing this video? This was started by some things that I've seen on Facebook groups where people buy Louis Vuitton items for their children. And these children are as young as babies, newborn babies with Louis Vuitton. And then the age just goes up from there, of course. And when I first saw these postings, I had a very strong reaction, and I started reading people's comments, and a lot of people agreed with me, a lot of people didn't. So that's where the idea from this video came from. In the world that I grew up in, children did not have luxury items like Louis Vuitton. I grew up poor. I have previous videos about this if you're curious about my past. But things like that were never even dreamed of, let alone actually given to children. You know how when you're a kid, you're in school, there are these trends and everybody has this name brand or that name brand, shoes or jeans or whatever. I never had any of that, with a couple of exceptions here and there when I was in like middle or high school, and those were things I really had to fight for, that I wanted for a long time, and that I ended up getting probably right as the trend was going away, which is still how I live my life. I still don't buy things immediately that are trendy. Do y'all remember the Yoogi t-shirts that were tie-dye and they'd change color in the sun? This was mid-90s, early mid-90s. I remember there was this surf shop near us that had them, and they were about $20, which nowadays is nothing. Everything is $20. You're throwing out $20 bills everywhere. Back then it was a little more expensive, and for my family, $20 was a lot of money. And my parents finally bought that for me, but as I remember it, they made me feel pretty guilty about it, or they at least made sure that I knew that that shirt was way overpriced and that they really shouldn't be buying it. But I was raised without name brands. I was raised to not give them any credence, not give them any importance, that it's just a name on something and all the name brand stuff is just way overpriced. I was also raised to believe that if you give a kid something like that, then they don't learn the value of money or the value of nice things. And they don't learn the value of working for something that's expensive or nice. So if you're given all that trendy name brand stuff, you don't appreciate it. It just becomes a normal thing. And then I felt like maybe, I don't know if this is really true or not, maybe just as a kid you're so self-conscious that you feel this way, but I felt like there were kids who judged you when you didn't have the name brand stuff. And of course those were the kids who did have it, whose parents had the money and the willingness to buy those things for them all the time. And the kids whose parents didn't have that money, or whose parents maybe had the money but refused to buy their kids all that name brand stuff all the time, those kids would get judged for not having these material things. So that's where I'm coming from in relation to this topic. I also have and saw other people talk about these things. So kids, toddlers, babies, obviously the youngest ones don't know what these name brand things are. They don't know why people covet them. They don't even have an understanding of that kind of desire. So why get them something like that when they have no idea at all what it is? And they might be interested in the box more than the item, like a cat. A lot of people have talked about how children shouldn't have luxury because they won't appreciate it. They won't appreciate it, they won't take care of it. How giving them things all the time, especially expensive designer things, makes them spoiled, turns them into spoiled brats. How it's showing off. So whether the adult is showing off, like, hey, I can buy Louis Vuitton for my baby or for my toddler. I can dress my kid head to toe in Gucci, whatever it may be. And they're gonna grow out of it in 2 weeks, but I'll just buy them another one. Some people see that as showing off. Or that the kid is showing off, like maybe they're old enough to know what these name brands are, like Louis Vuitton, and they carry something like that to school, like, yeah, look at me, I got a Louis Vuitton bag and you don't. There's also the point that kids need to learn the value of money. Most kids are not in a position to be able to afford something like a Louis Vuitton bag, let alone even a $20 t-shirt, because they're not old enough to have a job and work to earn money to purchase these things. So how do they learn the value of money if they're just given these expensive things? And that may set them up for failure or disappointment at least, in the future, or feeling like a failure if they don't get a job where they're able to afford all the necessities like rent and bills and food and gas and all that stuff, and also be able to buy Louis Vuitton for themselves all the time. I have always felt too, this is an argument I saw other people bring up, but it's one of my strongest arguments, is that when you're given something like that, especially at a younger age, that it doesn't mean as much to you, sort of take it for granted, that it will mean more if you sort of dream about it and strive for it and work really hard to earn that money and have to save up for it. And then you finally have it and you can go in and make that purchase yourself. And it's like an accomplishment of sorts that you've made it to this point where you can pay your bills and you have this money that you've been able to put aside for something that you really want that's important to you, especially if you've wanted it for a long time. Then that item has much more significance, importance, it's more meaningful to you. And it's not like, I'll use Walmart as an example, just going to Walmart and buying a $20 bag here and there. I see in these Facebook groups, I didn't start buying Louis Vuitton until I was in my mid to late 30s. And I see people in the Facebook groups talk about how they're in their 50s, 60s, and they're about to buy their first bag. And it means a lot to them because they wanted it for so long. Some people dream about this their whole lives and save up for years and years in order to get one. And that's really meaningful. So the idea there is, if you're just handed something like this when you're a kid and other people have to work so hard and so long for it, it doesn't have the same value, meaning, significance to you. You take it for granted. There are also assumptions about carrying luxury bags, whether you're a kid or not, that stir up assumptions in other people, stereotypes about you. So the assumptions that some people make about people who carry luxury bags, and then especially if you're a kid, people can put stereotypes on you, think you're this type of person when you're not. So for example, let's say there's a kid who takes their Louis Vuitton Neverfull whatever bag to school. Now the kids who see that know what that bag is, and their parents can't afford it or refuse to buy them a Louis Vuitton bag. There might be some resentment there from the kids who don't have it toward the kid who does. And with kids especially, that can definitely be manifested. I'm a teacher, I see this sort of jealousy thing all the time, where one kid is angry about another kid, that some assumption they've made, like the other kid hasn't really done anything wrong, and they'll direct anger or whatever else at that kid. It can cause bullying. And I'm not saying that's the fault of the kid carrying the bag, because they're not doing anything wrong by carrying it, but that can happen. The kid with the luxury bag can also get that same kind of thing from adults who see a kid with a bag and make assumptions and make stereotypes about them or their parents. And those adults who need to do some self-analysis, direct negativity at that child. Assumptions include that the kid's parents are rich. So, I mean, that could could lead to a kid being a target for robbery. The kid is spoiled because they have a Louis Vuitton bag or some other expensive thing. The kid is entitled or a jerk, or the kid gets everything they want and the kid doesn't have to work for anything and isn't learning that they have to work for anything in life. I'm not saying I believe those things. Those are just some of the assumptions that I've heard people make about kids and adults that carry luxury bags or drive luxury cars or any number of things like that, where you see someone and assume they have a lot of money, especially if you don't. So when I was analyzing my perspective that I don't think kids should have Louis Vuitton bags or the luxury bags like that, I was asking myself why. Like, what really is the harm there? And I've gone through some of that where spoiled, they don't learn the value of money, work, all that. So we've talked about that. But why specifically luxury bags? Why is it okay for a kid to have a $1,000 iPhone but not a $1,000 handbag, for example? So when I was analyzing my perspective, I thought about my childhood and how even though brand name things were not given any clout in our household, that I was taught they didn't mean anything, it's just overpriced stuff with a name on it, it's no different than other things that are cheaper, and like this handbag is no different from this handbag, with a $1,000 difference between them, let's say. Well, not having nice things made me really want nice things, and not necessarily brand name things specifically, just in general nice things, because we didn't have much. We were poor. I got into handbags in middle school and I've been into them since then, and my interest has grown. Sometimes I'm interested in certain brands. For most of the time that I've been into handbags, I haven't really cared about the brand. I've just looked for an interesting handbag. It wasn't until I was in college living in New York and I started seeing Louis Vuitton everywhere that my interest in that brand started. And I think part of my lack of interest in Vuitton was that it was so far above anything I could dream of. It was just, they were so expensive to me that I was never going to have that, so why even dream about it? But then once I started noticing it and thinking about it more, and as I'm analyzing this, looking back on it, I'm questioning that maybe we put too much value on these brand names. And I do think that there is a quality difference. I disagree with, it was mostly my mother telling me this, that a brand name thing is the same as the cheaper thing. In a lot of cases, I think that's true. I think in the case of luxury handbags, a lot of them anyway, compared to the $20 Walmart handbag, there's a huge difference in quality. And even though Louis Vuitton has been having all of these quality issues lately, when I think about going to another brand, I'll go to, let's say, Macy's and look at some of the bags there that are good quality bags. But to me, I still see a big quality difference between those bags and something like Louis Vuitton. And in most cases, it prevents me from buying those other bags. I would rather save up and put my money toward Vuitton. But it wasn't until I got the Louis Vuitton bags, started buying them, that I was able to see these quality differences because I had the bags in my hand. I think for people who have never had a Louis Vuitton bag, the draw to them isn't so much quality. There's an idea of quality, but you don't know it because you haven't seen it, touched it, used it. It's more in the clout of the brand, the status of it. And I think that some of us who dream about Louis Vuitton for so long and save up and put so much effort into it, so much desire toward it, that we're probably putting too much value on these things. And dreaming and lusting after a bag for so long makes you want it more and more, and when you buy it, it gives it more meaning because you worked so hard for it. And there's something in psychology, don't remember the name of now, it's some concept about when you've made a decision, especially if it's a decision that you have struggled with, whatever decision you make, you convince yourself that you made the right decision. Now that's not always the case that happens. Sometimes you realize you made the wrong decision. Let's say you have the money for a Vuitton bag. It's your first bag, you've always wanted one, but you're so hesitant to spend the money, but you really want one, and you've worked this hard, and you're just struggling, going back and forth about whether you should actually spend that much money on a handbag, and then you decide to do it. You get it, and you often convince yourself that you made the right decision because you want yourself to feel good about the decisions that you made. I wish I could remember the name of that phenomenon, that concept. If anybody knows, put it in the comments section. That's definitely how I felt when I bought my first Louis Vuitton bag. It was the Trevi GM. I've since sold it. I paid $1,500 for it. I'd built it up in my head for so long. When I decided to make the purchase, it was a difficult decision, but then once I got the bag, I was so thrilled. I was so happy and over the moon with it. And once I had it in my hands, I was able to see and feel that quality difference. There was a huge difference between that bag and any other bag I'd ever had before then. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's still worth $1,500. There is something about that brand name and the mystique behind it, the advertising, the history, the storytelling with each other, the friends talking together about how they want the Louis Vuitton bags, seeing other people with the bags and lusting after them. All of this builds up, and we really build these bags up too much, because after all, they are just handbags. So in the case of a child having one of these bags and arguing that maybe it's a positive thing and not a negative thing, well, one argument is that it knocks that brand down off the pedestal that we've put it on, that it probably doesn't really belong on. I mean, it belongs a little higher than the Walmart bag, some maybe a lot higher, but not like way up here higher. They are still handbags. It's just some fabric and leather sewn together with a little hardware thrown in. So when a child is given a handbag and they do kind of take it for granted, it's not as special as it would be if you'd worked for years and dreamed about it for years in order to save up and buy one. Well, maybe that's actually a more realistic viewpoint. Maybe that's actually how we should be viewing these bags and not putting them up on that pedestal and building them up in our heads so much. There's also the argument that life is short. So why wait if you can buy a bag that a kid wants and it happens to be $1,000+ and you can do it and you have no problem with it? Why not just buy it? It's just a bag, life is short. And also, if I'm buying a bag for a child, it's my money. I have every right to spend my money on whatever I want to spend it on, especially if it's my kid. I think it would be different if you're buying that for somebody else's kid because of all the assumptions and things that people put with the luxury items. I would get the parents' permission before buying a luxury item for someone else's child. And then I would also question, like I said a minute ago, what's the difference between a kid having a $1,000 iPhone or a $1,000 handbag? Well, what's the difference too between the bag and buying them a brand new car for their 16th birthday? In America, that's the age you can start to drive. Or in the summer, this was one of the things that I really missed out on when I was a kid, and I felt really like abused and mistreated. We used to have a theme park in Houston called Astro World, and we also had like Splash Town, a water park, and like everybody I knew had these summer passes that were probably $50 or $70 or so. I never got one, not one summer. Everybody I knew had them every year. I got to go to Astro World, I don't know, maybe 5 times in my whole life. And these people got to go all the time in the summer because they had summer passes. And what's the difference between buying things like that for your kid every year, which to me was certainly a luxury, and something like a handbag? I mean, the pass, it's an experience, it keeps your kids busy, but the handbag is something that could last the rest of their life too. What's the difference in the handbag and keeping your kid clothed in trendy name brand clothing all year, constantly buying the latest things? The $100, $200, $300+ sneakers every year. What's the difference? I think the difference is just the mentality that there are these assumptions made about luxury items, and those assumptions are not put on these other things, at least not to the same degree. There's also the argument that kids are not all the same, and I can definitely see this being a teacher where I see a lot of different personalities in the same age group. So let's say you have kid A and kid B, and kid A is somebody you could give a bag to, an expensive Louis Vuitton bag, for example, and kid A would not appreciate it and not treat it well, and maybe they just want it for the status of it and because they think their friends are going to think they're cool and other people are going to think they're cool, when in fact it's probably going to cause a lot of resentment from other kids. And this kid A doesn't really appreciate the item, wouldn't treat it well, might misplace it, not really keep an eye on how they're treating the bag, where they're putting it, whether they're leaving it somewhere. Kids are very irresponsible in that way. They're constantly leaving their things everywhere. Kid B, however, you could give a bag to and they would appreciate it. They would understand how much work would go into earning the money to save up for a bag like that, and they would treat it well. They would treat it like a precious object and take care of it, be careful with it, never misplace it, because it's important to them. They see the value of it, the financial value if nothing else, whereas kid A may not appreciate that. So I could definitely see, like, it's not okay to give an item like that to kid A, but to kid B it would be reasonable. It would make more sense with kid B. Another scenario I've seen people talk about is sort of a family bond, like let's say a mother-daughter situation. Of course it could be people other than mothers and daughters, but we'll use that example here. So mom is really into handbags and daughter sees that and she starts to get into handbags too. So as a bonding thing, mom buys a Vuitton bag for daughter so they can bond over that and share that experience, and that's something they have in common. Another approach that I've heard about, and I thought this was kind of genius, is if you have a kid, this is what some of the people do that buy the bags or the luxury Louis Vuitton items for babies and toddlers, is you don't give it to them when they're that age. You buy things for them and then you give it to them when they're old enough to appreciate it. And why I think that is brilliant is because of the financial aspect of it. So if you're buying a Speedy this year, they're right around $1,000, a little more than $1,000. You're buying it for a baby. By the time they turn, let's say 18, that Speedy might have doubled in price. It's at least gonna go up a few $100s. So you've saved all that money, and then maybe you bought it in the birth year, so you've got a brand new birth year bag to give to them for their 16th, 18th, whatever birthday. And I think that's a fantastic idea. And maybe you even buy them something every year, like an SLG or something, and you're saving money by doing that, and then you've got this amazing gift to give them when you feel ready to give it to them, when you feel that they are responsible enough for those pieces. Where that could backfire is the person you're buying the items for may never develop an interest in handbags, SLGs, or specifically Louis Vuitton or whatever brand you're buying. So if you were to go that route, be aware of that. I've heard people ask, what is the appropriate age to buy someone a Louis Vuitton bag? I've heard people say when they're old enough to appreciate it, which is a wide range of things. They could be 12, they could be 40, you know, it really depends on the particular person. Other people have said 11, 12, 13, other people have said 16, 18. Some people have said high school graduation. Some people have said college graduation. My favorite has always been when they're old enough to get a job and earn the money and buy it themselves. And that's been my favorite because that's the route that I had to take. And I think that's part of the problem in this argument is a lot of people put so much value on the Louis Vuitton brand or luxury brands, and we think that whatever route we took to get the item is the route that everybody else should take. But in reality, of course, we're all different. We don't have to put our experiences onto other people. So that's why I did this video, was to get you to think about other experiences besides your own and to question your own, analyze your own potential judgments about other people when it comes to this topic in particular, buying luxury items for children. So remember to go back down to your comment that you started at the beginning and write in now how your perspective changed, if it did, or was there anything that made you think a little deeper, anything that you hadn't thought of yet, any points that really stood out to you. I'd be very curious to see what you think about this whole argument. Thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Bye.